when he gets here, is past chair Michael Wadsworth, who will serve as our timekeeper. And I see he's not here, so we may have to improvise. And entity member Karen Borcher. I also wanted to point out Joanne Jensen, our general manager, if she would just wave, and Spencer Houston, if he would just wave. Thank you very much. Before we get started, a couple of announcements. Today's forum is being live streamed on the Valley's YouTube channel. It can also be viewed later for members who aren't present today. A second announcement. I was upset and sad Wednesday night to learn that someone or ones in the Valley had stooped to a new low with regards to our elections. The mailbox clusters were being defaced with stickers attacking one of our candidates. Nominations and Elections condemns this childish and stupid prank and apologizes to the candidate who was its focus. This kind of behavior has no place in our election process. And that's really important. It's been very important at NE to be strong neutrals, and the community has its opportunity to make its wishes known, and it doesn't have to resort to that kind of thing. I wanted to thank the following members who submitted questions being used in this afternoon's forum. If you're here and want to stand up and wave, please do so. It's not required. Gordon Brown, Dave Dubrowski, Cara Keating, Paul Mensch, Colleen Mitchell, Dan Murphy, Nicole Nathan, Kevin Nesbitt, Cindy Regas, and Norm Smith. We will have a 5-minute break at approximately 1 hour. Today, the focus is again on the candidates. Running unopposed for ACC, if they are here, are Alan Helvagian in the far corner waving, and Daniel Zink, who is out of town, actually. Board candidates Rick Asai and Tammy Vanderpolder have conflicts and are unable to be here. They have submitted written statements which will be read aloud. I will read Rick Asai's remarks, and Karen Borchert, for a change of voice, will read Tammy Vanderpolder's. The candidates are seated according to a lottery just held, and I will read your names. We'll start with Ray Meador. If you would stand up and wave.
Stand up and wave?
Well,
I'll stand
remember, you're on camera as well.
We're here.
And then the second person here in person is Nancy Olyanak. Thank you, Nancy. And finally, at the end of the table is Tom Henning. All righty. Let's have a round of applause for the candidates. Thank you very much. And remember, please mute your cell phones. Okay. So. The questions will be timed, but because there are only 3 of you, and because last time you were all very efficient with your time, I think at the very end of the forum, if we have some extra time, we might revisit some of the questions if you want to add to your remarks. We'll play that part by ear. Okay. Karen will hold up signs when you have 1 minute left and when you have 30 seconds left. I've brought a kitchen timer with a buzzer that I hope everyone can hear. When it goes off, your time is up. So we'll start with introductory candidate statements from the candidates for 2 minutes each. And since Tammy is first there, I'm going to pass the microphone over to Karen, who will read her introductory statement.
Okay, this is a statement submitted by Tammy for me to read. Getting to know me. The most difficult and important issue I have ever had to deal with was fighting for support, a proper education, and services for our artistic son, Michael. Michael will be 36 in December, and when he was young, there was very little support for a kid with his particular needs. As a matter of fact, there was a mandate in Canada to avoid diagnosing kids with autism whenever possible. I fought for years, and now Michael is healthy and happy where he is. I learned two things from this. The first is to persevere and not give up, even when things seem to be going against you. The second is that along the way, you will be far more successful if you treat people with kindness and respect instead of being difficult or demanding. I was lucky to have people go above and beyond for Michael because of the relationships we had. There is lots to love about Sudden Valley, but as far as geographically, I love spending time on the lake with family and friends. In addition, like so many of you, I am blessed to have some really great neighbors. If I could wave a magic wand, I would bring our amenities back to their original condition when the community was developed, and I would include all our trees being as healthy as they were 50-odd years ago. Thank you.
That was short.
Okay, well, it won't be read because I didn't write one. So we're just going to give it to you from the heart. I think that's probably the real way for me to communicate the best. I think I've mentioned before, I've been in Sudden Valley for 7 years, and I came from the big city of Seattle. Lots of traffic and lots of homeless and lots of crazy stuff down there. And we arrive at Sudden Valley, and my wife likes it every day more. And I do also. We are able to bring 2 of our children up here with us, and they've now relocated out of our house, which is awesome. Makes us empty nesters. They're out in, I have a daughter that works at Hagen's and a son that's in search of a job at the moment, but they live out in Everson. But they still come up and see us probably, once every couple of weeks, which is great. They both love the valley. We've been able to meet several people while we've been here. And I do work out in the gym a bit. I've hit a few golf balls in the wrong direction. Love the water, all the hiking. I think my wife does Lake Louise every day. She was running it for a while, a couple times a day. But the more that I hang out here, the more I want it to be long-term for my grandkids, if I ever have any. Don't got any yet, but hopefully someday. But it needs to be good for all the kids in the future generations. And everywhere I looked, I see it needed maintenance. And once I'm now on the board, it was an eye opener. It's like, you can only do so much with so much money. And there's lots of big projects. But I think there's a good pace for maintenance now. But there's still other great things that could be done. And I think I can help create some good energy and some fun stuff for the families that are here and the kids and the seniors also. I'm in that senior category, so we've got to have some fun stuff for the seniors also. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ray. All righty, next up is Nancy Alyanak.
Hi, I'm Nancy Alyanak, and my husband and I are geologists. We retired here 18 years ago for the natural beauty of the area. And as an introduction, the moderator suggested we describe what we would change if we had a magic wand. And I would restore our bylaws as they were before the legislature followed CAI bidding and replaced our bylaws with the Washington Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act. I would restore members' control over Sudden Valley dues and finances. And after that, I would drive a stake through the heart of any CAI vampires still lurking. Okay, I want to claw back as much of members' financial control as possible. Stable and predictable dues are important to people living here and far more important than funding somebody's wet slip. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, I will be reading Rick Asai's introductory remarks. And Rick writes, I really like it here. The natural beauty, the quiet, dark nights, the amenities, and the people. The atmosphere is welcoming. It's a great place to live. Bellingham is just up the road. Outdoor recreation abounds all around, from the Sound to the mountains to the rivers and lakes. What's not to like about it? And while originally planned as mostly a recreational community, it is changing. Bellingham continues to grow, and we are becoming more of a suburb year to year. There are more full-time residents, both retired and with families raising children. This I find pleasing, especially in the summer when so many outdoor activities are happening. But predominantly part-time occupancy, changing to more full-time occupancy, puts additional stresses and strains on our systems throughout the year, not just in the summer. I don't see this as necessarily a bad thing. It just will require ongoing adjustments. Heavier use of our amenities may necessitate a shortened renewal cycle with respect to our planned reserve study. Some heavier use by non-owner guests could also generate more revenue in our pools and golf course. So not all bad. If I had a magic wand, I would wish that we as a community could embrace the changes happening and look for ways to maximize the benefits and minimize the negative impacts on our watershed and natural surroundings. That was Rick Asai. So Tom, if you're up. And everyone, try and almost pretend the mic is an ice cream cone. You have to get your mouth really close to it to make sure it picks up. Sorry, someone once said that to me. It was helpful to remember.
Okay, my name's Tom Henning, and one of the suggestions for this introductory statement was to describe a difficult situation and how did you resolve it and what did I learn from it. My wife and I met and had our first date on April 19th, 1993, and got married exactly 2 months later. We were best friends for 29 years. We didn't have outside friends. We enjoyed each other's company every single day. And on June 27th, 2022, she presented herself with some conditions that I had seen before with her illness, that presented like she was dehydrated. So I got her down the rest of the stairs, had to wash her because she was kind of messy. Laid her out on the couch, got her some fluids, hoping that that was going to take care of the problem. Middle of the night, which about 2, 3 a.m. on the 28th, she was worse. So I called 911, had her transported to St. Joseph's, and found out a couple hours later when I called to check on her that she was terminally ill. And they could try to perform emergency surgery to save her, but that would have left her in a condition that were outside the parameters that we had set for each other for life. So the decision I had to make was make her comfortable, no surgery. I have to let her go. So for the next several hours, I sat by her bedside, told her what was going on. She was the fix-it nurse. She was a nurse. I was the fix-it guy. I did the mechanical stuff. But for the last couple of years, I was doing both roles. And I had to tell her, you know, this is what's going on. They could perform surgery, but it's going to leave you in a condition that's outside the parameters that we set for each other. And she was in a medically induced coma at the time. And I said, I have to let you go. I can't fix it this time. So I sat with her for several hours, telling her the condition. And towards the end, even though she was in a coma, she kind of squeezed my hand and had a little smile, telling me it was okay. Um, so I had to let her die. Most difficult thing I've ever done. I still can't forgive myself. But I can make difficult decisions when it's called for.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Tom. We'll start now with the questions. And I got my script here. Uh, Each of the questions has a couple of sub-questions. Um, the first topic is the big picture, where we live. And that includes the lake, and it includes Whatcom County as a government structure. And so I'll read the two questions that the candidates have been thinking about. In what ways does Sudden Valley impact the water quality of Lake Whatcom? Do we have an obligation to mitigate this impact? And if yes, what would you do that's not already being done? The second part of where we live is, should Sudden Valley have a formal official presence with Whatcom County? For instance, should the board appoint a liaison to the Whatcom County Council, to the Lake Whatcom Joint Policy Group? Would you support a Sudden Valley homeowner running for an elected position with the county? So we're going to start with Taimi in absentia, and I'll hand the mic over to Karen to read Taimi's response, and then we'll move on to Ray.
Again, for Taimi. With over 3,000 homes here in Sudden Valley, we do have an impact on Lake Whatcom, as do all the neighborhoods surrounding the lake. With each home that has been built here, there are roofs, driveways, and lawns that speed the flow of the stormwater to the lake, and stormwater is the chief source for phosphorus and bacteria. There are things we can do to help, however. We can reduce fertilizer and pesticide use. We can properly dispose of pet waste instead of throwing bagged pet waste on the ground like we see far too often in this community. We can try to landscape our gardens with native plants, although that sometimes can be difficult, as those tend to be the plants that deer find tastiest. We can make sure to maintain our vehicles to prevent fluid leaks. Also, I hope people aren't feeding the geese, as they produce a staggering amount of fecal matter. As far as whether or not Sudden Valley should have an official liaison with Whatcom County, I would say absolutely. We need to advocate with the county to get more of our tax dollars being spent in Sudden Valley. We did have someone at one time, but that is unfortunately no longer the case. I would love to see us have an official liaison to the Whatcom County Council again, as well as the Lake Whatcom Joint Policy Group. If someone wants to run for an elected position with the county, I think that would be great. Thank you.
Just a reminder to everyone, you have to get really close to the mic. I can tell if I hear a louder sound, whether or not the mic is picking up. So it sounds weird, but remember, think of it sort of as an ice cream cone.
Okay,
Yeah, that's good.
okay,
Be
sounds good.
close. Thank you.
All right. Whatcom County, they do oversee the lake, but we do live here, and yeah, Sudden Valley, we're impacting the lake for sure. The good thing about it, is they're doing all kinds of great stuff to try to make it better. But I mean, they just had a major spill at the other end of the lake with like 25 to 50,000 gallons of raw sewage down there at the north end. I mean, we had no control of something like that. There's mercury and phosphorus at the bottom of the lake from when there was industrial stuff that happened here. So there's a whole lot that it's hard to move, even if it's just our piece of the land up here. But in Sudden Valley, the biggest impact I see of bad stuff going into the water is really, I mean, I'm not a chemist or anything, but I know that some compounds of different stuff going into drinking water is not a good thing. And what I've seen the last 7 years is like the Canadians are making the problem. They come in and do nasty stuff. They don't care about the water. What I really meant to say is Canadian geese. So these guys come in giant V form, maybe up to 200 at a time, and just land and do their job. And it's not good for the water. We can't give them a citation. But we also have a dog park. And I'm not a regulator or look at all that stuff, but there's somebody come down there and says, hey, there's dogs here, there's water here, and there's sacked poop here, and there's urine here. I mean, they might have a complication. I don't personally, but who knows? Everybody's looking at the water. I think the fertilizer thing has gotten handled. And I think, the Orkin guy makes a living out here. All his chemicals are supposed to be family or pet friendly. So I don't think that's a problem anymore.
So Ray, excuse me, but the timer went off of probably about 45 seconds ago.
Oh,
So
okay.
even though we're good on time, I think overall you should maybe see if you can get to your, wrap up.
Okay. As for having people getting represented in Whatcom County Council, I think that's excellent. I think we do need a contact. We're a good piece of the real estate in the county. And it doesn't have to be somebody from the board. It could be somebody that lives here that has a passion and wants to attend and report back and let us know what's happening. I think that would be excellent. We want good drinking water, so we need to protect it. I was just in Mexico for 2 weeks, and in a 5-star hotel, it says, do not drink the water, in a plaque. And then somebody wrote below it, or you will die.
Oh, thank you, Ray. Okay, Nancy, are you ready?
Yes, everything we do in the watershed impacts Lake Whatcom water quality. The county is required to reduce the phosphorus entering the lake down to a total maximum daily load accepted by Department of Ecology. And the county does that by passing laws and raising taxes. Now, some things are easy. Use zero phosphorus fertilizer on your lawn and pick up your dog poop and then dispose of the poop baggie properly. Now, reducing sediment entering the lake. That is the sediment is the largest single phosphorus source to the lake. And that is more difficult. Moving water erodes sediment, and the drainage network carries that sediment into creeks and into Lake Whatcom. Bare dirt erodes more easily than vegetated dirt, so plant plants. Fast-moving water erodes sediment faster, so try to slow down moving water so that the sediment drops out before getting to the lake. Armored creek banks and straightened creeks move water and sediment it carries faster. The new shoreline management program requires softscaping stream banks instead of hardscaping and natural stream shapes instead of straight channels. And that is a change for Austin Creek that will eventually impact Sudden Valley's landscaping. On the council and various things, I was appointed to the Lake Whatcom Policy Group after the Sudden Valley position had been open for over a year. It is an advisory group with no power and no vote. Its meetings are open to the public, and I had been going regularly for 13 years. The County Council Water Work sessions sometimes include Lake Whatcom, and the meetings are public. The Lake Whatcom Management Program does not include Sudden Valley, and their meetings are not public. That's probably it for time.
Thank you, Nancy. All right, well, let me get to Rick Asai's comment on this. Here we go. All righty. He writes, Sudden Valley does have a major impact on the water quality of Lake Whatcom. Two primary sources of decreased water quality are human and animal feces and phosphorus runoff. The Lake Louise Road Sewage Interceptor is intended to manage sewage overflows and accommodate the full build-out of Sudden Valley. Primary sources of phosphorus runoff from Sudden Valley are dirt, yard debris, animal and human waste through poorly controlled sewer and septic systems, soaps and detergents, and fertilizers that contain phosphorus. This is a primary reason that Sudden Valley has stringent building guidelines in our ACC design review to control exposed dirt and soil, maintain natural landscaping, and minimize runoff by limiting solid surfaces on our lots. Of course, maintaining natural landscaping also adds to the beauty of our lived environment. As for governance, I do think it is important for Sudden Valley to have an impactful voice at the county level. The Whatcom County Council has 7 members. 1 represents us in District 3, meaning that we are in District 3. They represent more than just Sudden Valley. And 2 at-large members also serve us, in theory at least. So I think we should invite these 3 council members to a town hall to express our concerns to them directly. Similarly, I think we should invite the county sheriff. Then we can assess whether or not to seek direct representation. So thank you. That was from Rick. And Tom, you're up.
Okay, I can see where a city council liaison could be helpful, but they're not going to have the strength of a council member. So selecting a resident of Sun Valley as a council member would be much more beneficial, but how do we select that person? How do we control the platform that they're going to run on? And how do we finance their campaign? Was that dues money, private money? You know, I don't know how that would be handled. I also have a serious question about our property taxes. I want to know why Sun Valley residents have to pay an extra $1,000, or it's actually $1,100 in assessment and levies to maintain emergency services here. The rest of 98229 does not have to pay that. Why are we different? We pay the same taxes as the rest of the residents of Sun Valley, other than that. Since mid-December of this year, the fire department got shut down. And yet we were still charged the $1,100 assessment for the entire year, even though that fire department is not going to be open this year. And I would be surprised to see it open next year. So we're getting screwed. So we do need a voice to find out why this is going on and how do we resolve it. We need those emergency services. You know, I had a neighbor that had a fire in their house on December 5th. There was a 22-minute response time from the Geneva Fire Department if this department had been functioning, it would have been 2. So they suffered a lot more damage than they needed to have. So that's where I'm kind of going with that. We need a voice on the city council, which is how do we control that voice and how do we fund it?
Thank you, Tom. Alrighty, we're moving on now to question number 2. I'll just read it out loud and then we'll start with Timey. What are the essential security services required for an HOA of Sudden Valley's size and infrastructure? What can be done in-house versus contracted out? Should security be enforcing ACC regulations? Should the board create a staff position whose primary responsibility is overseeing community safety, emergency operations, and day-to-day security? And overnight? What is Sudden Valley's evacuation plan? Where are the evacuation routes, emergency boat evacuations, meetup locations, etc.? And we'll start with Timey's statement.
Security needs to follow up on member phone calls to deal with concerns, be it dilapidated vehicles and junk in the yard, noise violations, neighbor disputes, etc. Some issues can be corrected just by having a security officer come and explain the problem and the fees if the behavior persists.
Can
Okay.
you go closer to the mic?
Yes.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. Driving around the community, they can help deter vandalism or possibly thefts by stopping and trying to speak with the offenders. They can also let maintenance know about downed trees, icy or snowy road conditions in the winter, and other issues that need immediate attention. The faster these issues are reported, the faster maintenance can mobilize staff. By virtue of patrolling our neighborhood, I hope that they are also helping those that appear to be in distress. It would be great if security could have more authority to enforce our rules and regulations, but since they can only document and report, the association needs to follow up with warnings and then fines for offenders. These need to be documented and dealt with. I believe security will still do property checks for those people who are on vacation, as well as wellness checks, and those can be great services. Unfortunately, they cannot write tickets to speeding drivers. I know we have reached out to the sheriff's office, and it would be great if we could get them in here to patrol the roads at times. While it is very helpful for security to document ACC violations that they are aware of, they may not be aware of all the regulations. We need a compliance manager who would be responsible for all compliance issues. Regarding the evacuation plan, we do not have an evacuation plan, but we should. We used to have an emergency preparedness committee, which hasn't had a new charter for a few years. This year, we started the safety committee, but with overloaded schedules, we did not meet nearly enough. Emergency preparedness, including evacuation plans and meeting points, needs to be worked on. This should probably include reaching out to experts that can help in this area. I hope that this important issue is something that we can begin to address this coming year. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Fortunately, Sudden Valley is not a really high crime area. There's a few things happening, but it's not like Seattle. I live there. I know. My car, I lived in Ballard, got broken in 14 times in 4 months, just before I left. Like, how much security do we need in Sudden Valley? We have like 3,000 lots, which is really like 7,000 people. I went on the internet briefly and said, well, the FBI says if you got, well, that was short.
No. It was a
That's all right. No doubt. The
mispunch.
FBI says you need 2 police officers for every 1,000 people. So that means we need 14 police. I don't think that's really necessary. And then security guards, if for an event, they said that you need a security guard, 1 for every 50 people. So we need 140 security guards. So we don't need that. So right now, I believe we're only running with 1 or 2 security guards, and pretty much they're calling, fire department, they're calling the sheriff. They're really not down there carrying guns, which is a good thing. I don't like guns. I don't really think that internally to have our own officer security is really a good plan. I think we should still subcontract it, and then if we need more, we can get more. If we need them to help us with a neighbor or somebody in our community is not complying with something, that's okay, but it shouldn't happen too often. Also, as for evacuation plan, did some research on this, and I guess there is organization that's called the let's see, they call it the Office of Emergency Management, and it's in our Whatcom County office. And they have a phone number, and they do have the emergency evacuation roads for Sudden Valley. And if you call this number, 360-676-6681, they'll send them to you. And I verified that we do have an emergency route through the golf course. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. And Nancy?
Sudden Valley Security Service is a deterrent. They observe, document, and report to administration, and then enforcement is up to administration. Security can call the county for help, and the county may or may not respond. If the offender is a member of the public, security can ask them to leave, and then the offender can be trespassed. If the offender is a Sudden Valley member, there is a fine schedule and a lengthy appeal process that can be made even more lengthy. The July 2023 Color Run Party, organized by our current VP and promoted by RE/MAX, is an example of the appeal process's limited effectiveness. Our evacuation plan is the Whatcom County Comprehensive Emergency Management Plan, written by the Sheriff's Division of Emergency Management. SVCA has no authority in an emergency because we are not a political subdivision. We are a corporation. If someone wants to help in an emergency, volunteer for CERT, which is the Community Emergency Response Team. I do not support a separate security manager and staff position because the board and the GM cannot delegate authority they do not have.
Thank you, Nancy. I'll read Rick Asai's statement now on this question. He writes, as referenced previously, I feel we should invite the sheriff to sit down with us at a town hall to share our concerns about their stated mission to protect the lives, property, and rights of all residents in Whatcom County. Working out a relationship with our hired security staff to maximize efficiency for all would be the goal, while providing the necessary protections. I do think it would be worthwhile to look into whether or not our security staff could be on the lookout for ACC violations. They could make a note and report as possible violation and pass this on to SVCA staff. After all, our security staff are another set of eyes and ears of our community. As for evacuation plans, these should be communicated more clearly for different scenarios such as fire, flood, etc. And if they don't yet exist, they should be developed. This should be a task for the safety committee working with local emergency management teams. And so now we'll go on to Tom Henning.
Okay, current security is inadequate with no legal enforcement powers at all. If you can get them to show up, they will document a problem. And what do? Recommend a fine or something? I don't know. As far as security goes, I would strongly recommend trying to bring Norm Smith back. He was excellent in that position. And he's a pit bull. He enforced security very well, and put him in charge of that. He would report to the board, and we could, stand behind him in his decisions. He still supports this community. As far as evacuation plans, there isn't one that's going to work. In case of a forest fire, we're screwed. There's only pretty much 2 roads in and out of here. If they get blocked, they're going to be traffic congested. I would suggest looking at, especially in the upper areas, 3, 5, 13, the upper gates, 9, where the roads are narrow. They're not going to handle any traffic in an emergency. So let's look at the greenbelt areas, besides the golf course. That's a good one too. And look at using the green belts as an emergency evacuation route to give residents the opportunity to get to the main roads a lot faster than they can on these narrow winding roads. And along with that, I had the idea, because somebody suggested the lake as an evacuation. There's not enough boats down there to handle the residents. A consideration, as insane as it sounds, could be the possibility of purchasing a ferry boat that could handle 400 or 500 passengers. Have it available to where we could ferry past, residents from here to the north end of the lake, and then come back and get more. And lastly, in case of suggested evacuations, in case of an emergency, let's convince residents to leave at the earliest possible time to reduce traffic on the roads. This is going to be a disaster. It's got to be figured out. But I don't need any more time. 30 seconds is good. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, we're going to move on to the third question. And all righty. The third question is responding to the members and board priorities. A member writes, I have submitted questions and concerns to SBCA via both the website and the email. Most of the time, I do not receive any answer. All messages from members need to be answered. If elected to the board, how will you improve that situation? Now that's part one. But related to it is, how does the board set its priorities? I've not seen a member survey that comes out with any regularity. How do members communicate their priorities to the board? So we'll start with Taimi in absentia.
Okay, many questions that come into the board need to be answered by our GM. We are trying to answer any questions that we can. However, it is difficult for individual board members to answer some questions as we cannot speak for the entire board. That being said, we are aware of the issues that come into the board, and we do take them seriously. We should, however, develop a standard response to all members to at least acknowledge receipt, even if we are unable to respond at the time. Regarding board priorities, those are usually set by our staff. Road and culvert projects, bridges, maintenance, etc. are brought before the board in the form of capital requests. Our staff deal with the day-to-day issues, and as a board, it is on us to make the best decisions given the information presented. However, member input can be very helpful. It is the job of the long-range planning committee to put forward any member surveys. This is the first year in a while we have had a functioning long-range planning committee. There was discussion around a survey, but one was never developed. Hopefully, that could be one of the goals for next year's committee. In the meantime, a suggestion box could be set up at the Welcome Center for member ideas. Thank you.
On this subject? Board responsiveness and priorities?
Yes, yes. If a community person sends an email to the board,
Closer to the mic.
it should be responded rapidly as possible. I'm new on the board, but the direction that I was given, anything that comes in on the emails for the board would only be responded back to that community member by the secretary or the president. So that's the ruling that I know. But if I get to stay on the board, I will ride that a little bit harder and have some more say. I was kind of a rookie there, so I couldn't say a whole lot. Everybody's doing a good job. But anyway, now I can say a few things because I'm getting more feedback from the people that are here. I'm glad you're here again. It was a beautiful day every time we meet in this barn, it seems. But I think what else I had here is that there's just the priorities that are set. They are, like Tommy said, they're kind of set by the general manager, the maintenance people, the stuff that has to happen. Is we meet every couple of weeks, and pretty much it's all set there for us. Sometimes there's an opportunity in the beginning of the board meeting after they take roll call to add hot items. But then once again, everybody on the board has to agree that they want to add to a longer evening to add those new items. I don't think anybody's ever refused, to tell you the truth. And also, I wanted to make mention that there is opportunity for the community to come at the board meetings, and they can get 3 minutes to talk to the board about anything, really. I have put in and will again put in that if you come and you have something to say for 3 minutes, I believe that you should get a response back on what your idea was, or if it was a problem, by at least within a week, what you did say did get listened to and did get listened by the board and discussed a little bit. Because right now, you say something, it doesn't get much follow-up unless it's an immediate thing that general manager can take care of real fast. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. And Nancy?
Past boards used a communication committee to answer or coordinate answers to members' questions. However, any board director can answer a question, quote, in a manner the director or officer reasonably believes to be in the best interests of the corporation, end quote. That's the Nonprofit Act. I reasonably believe it is in the corporation's best interest to have an informed membership, and I will answer what I can. Past boards have tried to impose codes of conduct or non-disclosure agreement on board directors. Those codes or agreements curtailed answering members' questions, and I reasonably believe those are not legal. The advisory vote measures communicate member priorities, provided the board sees fit to put the members' measures on the ballot. Property owner comments can get issues out, but it's hard to gauge the depth of support. Member surveys are labor intensive and have a cost. On the other hand, members can vote for advisory measures with little cost. It's a few extra pages on a mailing that needs to go out anyway. I think of the budget vote as if it is an advisory vote. The budget is almost guaranteed to pass, but I can still register my opinion. So, do you support that budget 7% dues increase? I do not, so I voted no.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. I'm going to read Rick Asai's response to that same question. Rick writes, I will agree that how follow-up to member questions and concerns has been handled while I have been on the board is a little bit confusing. Some questions have a straightforward answer with specific information, while others are much more complex, dealing with policies and procedures. Having a standardized procedure would help. The board needs to be made aware, not necessarily of each and every query, but kept up to date on the most significant issues raised, especially if they cannot be addressed by staff and require board action. As for a member survey, we are long overdue. I think this was previously undertaken by the Long Range Planning Committee. We should have one developed for next year, well before the development of next year's budget. But in addition to a comprehensive survey, more frequent, shorter ones could be utilized throughout the year using something like SurveyMonkey. In fact, this concept could be more timely and cost efficient. I think that more frequent town halls could be held on certain topics to help information exchange, followed by a SurveyMonkey type questionnaire for owner input. This way, SBCA could become more responsive throughout the year compared to our current annual meeting. If that's confusing, I think he means that there's only one opportunity currently for that kind of feedback. Okay, and Tom?
We're on question 3, right?
Question 3, yeah. So member questions, answering member questions, and board priorities, reflecting member desires.
And if I recall, the person that submitted this said they had submitted several questions and concerns that just haven't been acknowledged. Might not be a popular answer, but I think we need to put together a system for this to be done. Not email, not text, not phone messages, but a written response with requirements. If they expect the board to consider these considerations, they need to put some time into it themselves. So when they submit a question or a concern, they must also submit a reasonable solution and a cost-effective plan to bring this about. Otherwise, I would suggest the board acknowledges their submission, but it's been rejected for failure to comply. Not being a board member, I don't know how priorities are being taken care of right now. Best way to communicate a member's suggestion would be by written request, mailed or dropped off at the office. And I'm repeating myself here, so sorry about that. But yeah, they do need to be acknowledged. It's not fair to have them submit something and just not get an answer. And even if that answer is a rejection for not following the request and the requirements of submitting something in that form.
Thank you, Tom. All righty, well, this, I believe, is time for a 5-minute break. Sadly, we don't have any coffee and cookies, but if you want to get up and stretch and just, recollect your thoughts, this is the time to do it. And then we'll get back together in about 5 minutes. And we have a last question. Sorry? I've been goofing off. Oh, I didn't. Actually, I was going to try and get a sheet cake to have. After there's so few people here, it wouldn't have made much difference. Maybe I'll do it for the meet and greet next time. Yeah. Well, no, no, I'm not going to ignore you.
Doing fine.
Well, thank you. There. Oh, you're Colleen. Oh, nice to meet you, Colleen. No, I see where you're going with this. The question was only how would you recommend a solution? And I thought without being able to see the actual current, we had the old agreement, someone had provided it, but it was almost illegible. It didn't copy well. I couldn't seem to, adjust the contrast so that anyone could read it. I did send it to the board members, but it wasn't helpful. And anyway, it apparently expired in 2019. So I chatted with Joanne, and she was not clear. She thought right. I mean, I think that all of these questions, obviously they don't have solutions that can come up in a 3-minute answer. I only thought with that one, I'm making that optional for the candidates to try and weigh in on a solution until they could have been provided with something that they sink their teeth into. It's just so amorphous. But some may have a view. Mhm. And that doesn't came recently because I never got it. Unless that's strange. And how long ago was that? A week ago. Well, I mean, that's so strange. Because seeing that it come recently, I thought maybe it's come in the past. We've had a new postmaster for the past year and a half approximately. Exactly. So I thought, well, maybe they come and, I go back and forth between Pleasant Valley and Seattle. But I went through my mail. I have not seen it unless it just got stuck with something else. And I just saw it was I don't know, was it a flyer or was it actually in an envelope? Yeah, I don't know about that, Colleen. Right, no, 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 you have it and. Mhm. Mhm. Dissolving the HOA is also far from an easy thing to do. But what I'm thinking is, it seems to me there are a couple of key things. I'd like to try and do a synopsis of both forums. A lot of things came out, but I think the key thing is the board priorities. If the board depends on staff to set the priorities, then they're not reflecting. Well, I'm just saying that, in other words, changing the process by the board sets those priorities. I would think it would be something the board would consider doing during like a retreat at the very beginning of the term. Mm. No, I know that, but people don't always know. It's good stuff. I think it's really too bad. The thing is, if the board is going to rely on to tell them what needs to be done, then that's a board decision that could be made. They could decide to reorient a bit. As we say. Yeah, we just mean a lot of things. Yeah. They don't follow that, but I have given the board members the option to sign it. I mean, I just wanted to say that. And so then, we don't, I know that we don't have a key, but we. Oh, exactly, you wouldn't go somewhere in to that because from the valley, who would go in and send them and send them to I'm not sure the boundary. Hey guys, I'm gonna turn my speaker. Spencer, are we live? No, not that. It's tempting though. I'd like to call the meeting back to order, our forum. Is it live, Spencer? Perfect. Okay, so we have a last question. And again, it has two parts. The first part is pretty straightforward, and the second part, I have a little bit to say before we go to the actual answers. So the first part, and I think what I'll do is let you all answer part one, and then I'll read a little background in part two, and we'll go there. So the first question, the first sub-question is, and most of these questions are almost verbatim from the people who sent them to me. The fitness center appears run down and dirty. It's time to give it a makeover. Yeah. Repairs, paint, lighting, and cleaning could make it really shine. It's a wonderful resource for the community. What would you propose for the future of the fitness center? And we'll go through that one, and then we'll go to number two.
Okay, reading for timing. Okay. Ice cream cone. Okay. At one time, we had a detailed schedule for staff tasks for cleaning the gym and sunshine room. We need to develop that again, have schedules posted, and rec staff needs to initial after completing those tasks. Some of our equipment needs new parts. Those need to be purchased and installed. Any necessary adjustments to equipment need to be made. Perhaps we could reach out to the people on our volunteer list to get together to do a deep clean and possibly painting in key areas so we get a fresh start. Then staff can take over. Thank you.
And so Ray, you're up next on the fitness center.
All right. Well, I agree with the comments that the
Timing?
this room needs to get refurbished. Absolutely, like every room. It's really dated. When you got all the even in the machines and stuff, they got padding on them so you don't hurt yourself because it's metal, and they all got duct tape all over them. It's really not the best. It's not sanitary either. So it's for a full revamp. I'm all for that, and we'll push for that since somebody really nicely put it in front of everybody. It gets lots of attention. So that's good. I don't think we'll just stick with that question right now, right?
Yeah, we'll get to the second one in a moment.
Okay.
So Nancy, fitness center, please.
Yeah. Fitness center, paint and cleaning is probably within the GM's spending authority, or the board president or the vote of the board can direct the GM to paint and deep clean the gym to get it started. Now, some thoughts on a future gym. So how would you feel if a vote of the board took your space away for the temporary use of another? 10 years ago, that happened to the adult center and its exercise room with wood floor, mirrored walls, and balance bars. Most of that studio was converted into an expansive play area for the temporary county library. So how did this happen? September 2014, the board, with Mr. Brown as president and Mr. Waterman as managing director, whatever that is, voted to negotiate with the existing adult center users to relocate to equal quarters, work with staff to transfer adult center meetings to new locations. 3, negotiate with Whatcom County to lease the adult center for 24 months, 2 years, and negotiate with the Friends of South Whatcom Library to pay all costs associated with the lease at no cost to Sudden Valley. Well, none of that happened. The board never voted to end the temporary status that I could ever find, and the Friends of the Library are no longer working or interested in a new library building. I look around and see a lot of empty space in the temporary library, so I wonder how that space can be used. I think there is room to repartition the adult center to accommodate adult center space and library space. And that is a perfect subject for an advisory vote. And let us ask the membership how to use our limited indoor space.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm going to read Rick Asai's response to the fitness center. He writes, the capital replacement plan has cardio machines up for replacement in 2025 and the weight machines up for replacement in 2026. So it would be good to do some interior sprucing up at this time. I understand that the fitness center gets a lot of use and is very popular. I also agree that the interior of the downstairs of Barn 8 is feeling a little tired, even though the walls were painted recently where artwork is displayed and look nicer. And maybe refurbishing the snack bar for social gathering. There are also some possibilities both there and in the clubhouse. He writes also, another consideration along these lines is the deconstruction of the ice barn and construction of an open-air pavilion to replace it. As discussions continue, there may be opportunities to consider expanding the exercise area in Barn 8 into a portion of the pavilion that could be enclosed. Time will tell, but I just mentioned this as a point of consideration. And so, Tom, if you want to weigh in on the fitness center? Close to the mic. Perfect.
I've never been in the fitness center, so I don't know what kind of condition it was in. So before I got to the meeting, I went in there, talked to the two employees that were working there, and they were both more than happy to walk me through the entire facility, showed me their concerns. Their particular concerns were lighting. They thought it was too dark in some areas, and I agreed. There's some burnout light bulbs. As we went through the center itself, most of the equipment appeared to be in good working order, but some of the foam padding was worn and well used, and they could be replaced. I saw some areas of paint that could be touched up, or even a full coat of paint for the whole thing would be, a pretty good idea. Went through the showers, noticed some dirty areas in the showers, some mold in the tile grout that could be cleaned up. There was a couple people using the fitness center at the time, so I asked their permission to give me their input. And most of it was pretty positive. Some of it just needed to be cleaned up a little bit. So all in all, it didn't look like an expensive item to me that could be taken care of. But at the same time, it's an excellent example of how different facilities affect different residents. Some people are concerned about the fitness center, some the marina, some the sports facilities, the sports courts, the golf course, and the parks. Everybody has their own priorities. And I understand that, and we just need to figure out a way to fund everything that needs to be done.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, now we have the last, let me just, got a lot of things here, since I also read Rick's paper here. Give me 1 second to get back to that last question. Okay. This question became a little problematic. I'll read the question, and then I'll just give a little background of my struggle to formulate it in a way that would be helpful to the candidates and helpful to the members as they hear the responses. So the question reads, as a member of the board, how would you resolve the lack of sufficient parcel lockers provided to the HOA, to an HOA of this size? That is the straightforward question from the member. Now, the background, because I've heard about this quite a bit, is that members are frustrated, especially during the holidays when the boxes are full. The addressee doesn't collect their package timely. So others have to drive all the way to the main post office on Orland Street and stand in long lines to collect their goods. As someone who's lived in the Valley now 10 years, I'm familiar with that complaint that comes every December, absolutely. So the questioner had sent a recent communication from the new postmaster, and that was sent to the candidates to look at. But I also felt that we should understand the current agreement that Sudden Valley has with USPS, because what have we signed on to do, and what services had they offered to provide? And a member actually had provided an agreement, but the agreement was dated November 5, 2009 to November 5, 2019. And in chatting with our GM, Joanne, it didn't appear, at least at this point, that we've had an agreement since then. We may or may not. It's, as I think we all know, dealing with the federal government, sometimes you get answers and sometimes you don't. So that's still pending. Maybe there is one. We don't know. That's why I thought I should make the response to that question optional, because how can you come up with a suggestion for a resolution if you don't understand the parameters? Yes, I did communicate to the candidates that that question is going to be optional, but if you want to opine, by all means, go ahead. And And if you want to skip it, that's okay too. Now, one member did opine, namely Rick Asai, but will just start and hear if any of the others, and I would do him in his turn. So did we have a response from Timey? Okay, great.
Tammy says this. Poster boxes are not unique to Seddon Valley. While a few new parcel boxes would help in making every effort to pick up our packages in a timely manner to make space for others, the problem will remain in peak times. The best solution, in my opinion, would be to find a private postal company to come in and set up here in the community. That would not only allow parcels to be picked up in the valley, but would give us access to UPS and FedEx, as well as shipping outgoing packages. I'm not sure how to entice a business like that to set up here, but it would be great to have. Thank you.
Okay, Ray, are you a pass or are you an opiner?
Take it, sure. It's reoccurring all the time, and I'm thinking it's not just one gate, but it's probably all the gates.
Mm-hmm,
So it's a lot of extra storage.
mm-hmm.
Tommy's idea is a great idea to get a company to come in and do a postal shop right here, a parcel shop. FedEx, UPS, do it all. That would solve the problem. But, got to find somebody to do that. In the meantime, if we can't, I don't know if the U.S. Post Office is going to give us more storage container, because how much more storage area do you need? I don't know if they'll go for that. I deal with the postal department on apartment buildings I have, and it's not a fun deal. It's getting more space when you need, we've got more than 2 people living in a unit. They got 3 that need more mailboxes, and they say sorry. That's the way it comes.
Ray, you should get your mouth closer.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
Yeah,
that
they
got
don't-
picked up.
The post office, they don't customize more mailboxes very often. So I don't think it would be an easy fix before this December to get anything done at any of the gates. So it might be good for us to pursue a company that might want to set up business in Sudden Valley with the postal and FedEx. But we would have to support them if they'd stay here, Anyway, that's what I know.
Okay, well, thank you, Ray. Nancy, do you choose to opine or do you choose to pass?
Well, I've basically used all my time for the last question on the,
We've gotten a little
fitness
relaxed
center.
with the time.
So are you offering me more? Or?
Yes, I am. It's 4:20. Technically, we were going to run until
Okay.
5. We're not going to have to run that late. So go ahead if you have some thoughts.
I'll make this brief. There isn't a good solution that I can think of. A private company is going to be costly. And the last thing I heard about parcel off lockers, and it's been a couple of years, is that the company that makes them isn't making them. And even if you want to buy them, there are none to be bought. Now, I don't know if that's the case now, but it's also a possibility. There just doesn't seem to be a good solution. So all I can say is keep tracking your packages, and when they, you can look up online when it goes into the locker on the USPS tracking, and get down there and get it out so the next person can have access. I wish there was an easy answer. On this one, there is not.
Thank you, Nancy. Rick also opined, and he wrote, as regards to the parcel boxes, I would like to know just how often this issue is a real problem. I think Rick is a relatively new member of the community, not to mention the added cost of installing more parcel boxes. As more and more packages are delivered by other third-party carriers, the postal parcels may reduce in number. Okay. He had a final thought on these questions, which I didn't read before, so I'll read it now. I hope that we would collectively support efforts to maintain all of our existing infrastructure and amenities. I would hate to see more buildings lost due to neglect, such as happened to the previous library building, Barn 7, and the Ice Barn. So, but basically, we're going to the question on the parcel boxes. Do you care to speak to that, Tom?
Absolutely.
All righty.
This is a subject I'm passionate about. I got involved with it early on after moving here, after seeing some of the nightmares people were going through trying to get their parcels delivered. We all remember a few years ago when there was no space at the post office. There was no space anywhere for all the Christmas packages. Kids lost their Christmas presents. They weren't delivered on time, and they had to end up using the ice barn to distribute after the first of the year. That's unacceptable. Quite by surprise, Friday evening, I received an email from a past board member. I was the one that posted the current contract on Facebook, made it available to people. And this person was on the board back in 2004, 2005, and part of the negotiations and putting a program together with the current postmaster at that time. I'm going to use some extra time. And they came to an agreement. It was a lengthy agreement and one that I would have supported 100%. And the agreement was when we knew the rotunda wasn't going to be adequate for providing all the mail, they agreed to install some post office clusters in gates 2 and 5, I think, as a beginning, just to test it out. But that agreement also said that parcel boxes could be used, but any oversized package or packages that extended beyond the availability of parcel boxes at that time would be delivered to our front doors. Parcel boxes, I don't use, it wasn't a big problem for me. But back in 2022, and I'm going to refer back to my wife again, she had major surgery on her leg. She fell, broke her right leg, and it's going to go over. So I don't want to see any signs. Broke her leg into 17 pieces, right leg. Had to have surgery at Harborview, where they were able to put her back together and sent her home with a prescription for 140 milligrams of OxyContin a day for her recovery, and told us that her primary care physician would be taking over her pain management. Nobody told him. So he was willing to give her 40 milligrams a day, which was totally inadequate, and she used more than 40 milligrams a day. So he told her he wouldn't give her more. She was being non-compliant. And one weekday, I got a Form 3849 in my mailbox saying there was a registered letter that was not delivered to me from her doctor, and it would be available after 72 hours at the post office. It was too late that day for me to go down and try to get it. So I went the following morning when her nurse was there to try to collect that letter. And they said, sorry, it says 72 hours. It won't be available for 2 more days. When I finally got the letter, the envelope was stamped urgent, time sensitive. And when I opened it, it said that her primary care physician was dropping her as a patient for being nonconformant. I was 24 out, and they would accept no more communication from me after that period. I would have requested a referral to a pain specialist, but he just dropped her. No relief in sight, which brought on a suicide attempt. That suicide attempt, she lost so much blood that it left her with some lasting heart damages. Those heart damages led to a blood clot in her bowels. She went septic immediately, and that's when I had to let her go. There was no fixing her at that time. Nobody in this community should be denied time-sensitive registered mail. I know I'm not the only person that's had to deal with this. Other people in this community have had to deal with mail that was time-sensitive that they could not respond to because it wasn't delivered. So that original agreement said that time-sensitive registered mail or anything that required a signature would be delivered on the day it was due to our front doors. Unfortunately, in 2005, when they wrote a long, beautiful agreement that I would agree to 100%. But they changed postmasters, and the new postmaster wouldn't sign that agreement. And it got tabled until 2009 when they ended up with the agreement they have now, which was that they would hold all time-sensitive mail packages at the post office. This caused my wife's death. And nobody needs to go through this. You know, yeah, I could have sued the post office. I could have sued Sun Valley. Sun Valley's the one that signed the agreement. But the residents of Sun Valley weren't responsible. The board of directors was. They were no longer there. And it wasn't going to bring her back. But this has to change. Federal law says in the postal statutes that the post office cannot enter an agreement with any entity that deviates from the standard delivery practices of the U.S. mail system. This agreement does that. It's illegal.
Well, Tom, since at the moment, it's not clear that Sudden Valley has an extant agreement.
Let me
Or
finish.
if it does,
Let me finish.
okay,
This agreement was signed in November 5th, 2009.
right.
Research showed me at the federal government website, as far as contracts and agreements goes, they have to be renewed maximum, any contract with the federal government every 10 years, maximum. So our agreement with the post office is null and void as of November 5th, 2019. We no longer have an agreement with the post office. And we need to send them a letter through our attorneys saying, you have to deliver our mail the way everybody else in the country gets it. There are no exceptions in their mailers, their own mailers that they send us say they deliver to our doors. There's no exceptions for Sun Valley. This is wrong. We pay for a service we're not getting.
Well, hopefully with the new board and the new fiscal year, this is the kind of issue in a sense we talked about when we talked about setting priorities and getting input from the members as well as from administration. You know, administration can probably set priorities based on what they know is about to fail or about to happen or is urgent, but then there are the more possibly discretionary priorities that the members would like to see pursued. And this surely would be one of them.
Well, my opinion is we need no more parcel boxes. They need to deliver the mail the way they're supposed to. Cluster boxes are fine. Those are accepted all over the country. But registered mail, damn it, no.
Okay, my dears. We're ready now for closing statements. And the audience has been very patient. Thank you. And we'll just go in the same order. So, Karen, if you want to get up and.
Okay. Oh, no. Amy says, I'm sorry I was unable to join the meeting today, but I will be at the meet and greet that is coming up. And I believe that's next Saturday. Thank you for those that participated either online or in person today or who will listen later. I just want to remind you all of the trunk or treat. It's coming up on October 26th. We are looking for more trunks to participate, and there is a bin at the Welcome Center that we would love to see filled with lots of candy donations for our kids. This year, CTK will be doing their annual pumpkin carving event that same night and location as the trunk or treat. They will also have some games for the kids as well as hot chocolate and cider. It should be lots of fun for both our youngest members as well as their families. Thank you.
Ray, back to the closing statement.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you guys for being here again. My last closing statement I did last time I was here. I think I did a closing statement here, then I think I did it on the newspaper. So got to keep them fresh. So this closing statement is going to be on my activities yesterday afternoon. I spent 6 hours in our community trying to understand the needs of the community. And so I visited 3 gates that I really knew nobody. I went to gate 9, I went to gate 13, and I went to gate 5. I'm going to tell you about, I met 25 people, but I'm going to tell you about 5 people that kind of like helps me understand the needs that are out there. And I hear more of the needs by getting out in the field than just the people that come for the 3 minutes or the people that come for the town meeting. But anyway, I had a great time. Met some neat people. So the first stop, I stopped in gate 5. Nope, excuse me, the gate 9. I don't know my way around there very good. But first guy I met, he was the father, he had 2 kids. He's been living in the valley for 7 years and absolutely loves it. He works from home, and his backyard is a forest, and his kids are just in heaven living here. There's kids all in the neighborhood. His house was very well decorated. They're ready for trick or treat. Great gate. But he had a concern. He says, really worried about this. You see that giant tree over there? I go, yeah, that's a big tree. He says, I'm afraid it's going to fall on my kids or somebody else. It's not mine, it's Sudden Valley's. I says, well, let's take a picture of it, get the address, we'll look into it and see if it qualifies to be cut down or removed. He was overjoyed. I haven't even said anything other than I'm going to look into it. But everybody has different needs. The second person I visited, I will tell you his name. These other people, I won't use their name, but this guy won't matter if I use his name. His name was Kelly. His house was decked out for Halloween the 13th. His address, you should drive by this. This place is scary. It is on 2 Meadow. That's in gate 9. Once again, he has a job at home. He's staying there. He's got kids. Loves Sudden Valley. Next person I met was a senior, and he's been here a long time, like 15 years. But right now, he's very senior, and he's afraid to go down his driveway. It's because right by it is kind of a blind corner. It's rated at 15 miles an hour, and he says, I can't go down there until after 10 o'clock because everybody's going to work and they're going 35 miles an hour, and I'm going to get hit. Scary. So we got to look into this. This guy can't go down his driveway. I would have never known unless I stopped on his door. The last one, because they're telling me I talk too much. I driving down the street and I saw some people moving in. A new couple, they just arrived from Bend, Oregon. They got a 2,400 square foot house and trees around them. Him and his wife, they're ecstatic. And they are in gate 5. And he says, my dues in Bend, Oregon were 456 and I had 1,200 square feet. I got 2,400 square feet. He really likes the dues. Trying to take care of people. It's kind of nice to meet awesome people all day. All great people.
Well, thank you, Ray. That's fun. And I don't want to talk about myself. I did something like that when I first ran for the board. Unfortunately, I knocked on doors and I learned that that is a no-no. Needed to find them in the street, but at any rate.
It's
Okay, Nancy, your turn for a closing statement.
okay. I want to create more opportunities for members to show their preference on how their dues are spent and how much those dues are. Stable and predictable dues are important to people living here, especially members with mortgages, with growing families, and to retirees with limited opportunities to increase their budget to match the board of directors' ever-growing appetite for higher dues. Members have their own budgets to follow, and so should the board of directors and the community association. And I am running because I want to keep Sudden Valley a community people can afford to live in.
Thank you.
Short.
I assumed you were finished. It looked
Yes.
seemed to be a final point. Okay, I will now read Rick's closing statement, Rick Asai. And he writes, we are experiencing growth, both in new homes being built and in the makeup of families moving into the valley. Most businesses thrive on growth, so there are opportunities for us, even though we're not a business per se. One challenge I see is that our revenue stream is relatively static, collected for dues and reserves, because whether the lot is built or not, we are generating income from privately owned properties. But as occupancy increases, the relative income to the valley is not keeping pace, especially in the face of more full-time owners versus seasonal ones. And more full-timers will have a greater impact on our watershed, facilities use, wear and tear on roads, and more. And operating costs continue to rise for both wages and materials and supplies. Sudden Valley has been maintaining pretty well for the most part, but we must really watch this closely as these trends continue to develop. It could be like a hidden iceberg threatening to sink our ship. So in closing, I'd like to help out as much as I can. Fine-tuning the sonar, watching out for icebergs, and continuing our pleasant voyage. It's going to take all hands on deck, and I'm ready to pitch in as part of the crew. And so, Tom, your closing statement, 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of take a different route. May not be real popular. I'm running for the board, but if I don't get elected, it's not going to kill me. But I see multiple postings on Facebook and other social media sites where members claim that the board of directors, ACC, nominations and elections, finance committee work for the membership of the community. That's not true. To say they work for the community would suggest they're compensated for the time they give. They're volunteers. And being volunteers, what they do is they represent the community. And what they're representing is your property values, the investment that you made in your house. So they're working on your behalf, whether you like it or not. They're also, I would be working on my behalf as well. Others say to dissolve the HOA. I don't think that's legally possible, but think of the consequences of doing that. What happens to your street improvements? What happens to snow removal? What happens to the golf course? It'll become overgrown and weed strewn within a couple of years. Same with the dog parks, all of the parks. This place will become a dump. And you're going to have to pay for these things yourself. The HOA represents your best interest. You bought into an HOA. Let's make it what's good for everybody, not just a few. I did not support Wacoya, but it's a fact of life now. It allows for a 7% increase of the dues on an annual basis. A lot of people don't like that. But we are way underfunded for what we have and what we have to maintain. Not only does it limit dues increases to 7%, it also prevents dues increases of 10, 15, and 25% a year, which is where they should probably go. But we're limited to 7%. And we got to work with what we have. Everybody needs to agree that we're working on each other's behalf and stop the threats. Stop the threats of violence and all the abuse. These people are volunteers. They don't get paid. So let's treat them with the respect they deserve for giving their time to protect you.
Thank you, Tom. I'm moderating to hear from the candidates, and so I'm biting my tongue since I have lots of thoughts of my own. But there'll be an opportunity actually next week, next Saturday from 3 to 5. Nominations, elections, and admin are sponsoring a candidate meet and greet. I understand that each candidate will have a table here and a chair. You can bring your literature, but people will, and I'm going to bring some refreshments, appropriate ones, and nothing alcoholic, sadly. It's forbidden in the barn. But that will be a chance to follow up with people on a lot of these kinds of things, you know. I mean, people see the path to the solution differently, but I absolutely agree. No one runs for the board or for any committee in the Valley out of some nefarious, misguided motivation. It's just not the case. We may not see the solution the same, and that's where, you know, civilized, respectful discourse comes in, and fact-finding and information. So, and that way, actually, I just want to thank the three of you for being here, and Tammy Vander Polder and Rick Asai, who are not here, but tried to communicate remotely, and our ACC candidates. One of them was here. I think he stepped away. For taking the time to run for the Valley, because that is what we have. We do have member input, and in the form of running for these positions. And so I want to thank you for doing that. Let's see. Is there anything else I really wanted to say about that? I hope that we'll have more people. I realize I should have, I think that the Valley has some sandwich boards that we could have put out a couple of days ahead of time at the gates to remind people to come. It's really important, I would think. You know, I'm a big fan of, you know, being part of the solution if possible, not just part of the problem by complaining, right? So I would hope that we would have a good turnout next week. It will be very informal. There'll be food, munchies, coffee, things like that. And again, I think we should end up with a round of applause from the people here for your participation. Thank you so much.
Can we give a round of applause to Gail too? She put so much work into these forums, and I really appreciate her doing this.
All right.
See.